We want to begin this morning with a new series in the book of Exodus. Follows right after Genesis. Exodus comes right after Genesis. Now, if you remember in Genesis, we've been reading, there was a famine. And God used the difficult circumstances in Joseph's life to arrange for provision to take care of the Israelites. It was through Joseph and the hardship that he went through that the Israelites were taken care of. Now, you have to remember, though, a lot of times we look at Jacob bringing his whole clan over to Egypt, and we see that as the Israelites going to Egypt. But that's not the first time. The first time, actually, if you think about it, Abraham, right after he was called to leave his home country, if you read in Genesis chapter 12, if you read in Genesis chapter 12, you see right after God calls Abraham out of his home country, he starts on his journey and he meets with a famine, and right there you see the first time that the people of God in Abraham go to Egypt. And so Egypt has been there in the history of God's people as a place where you turn when you find you are in need. You turn to find sustenance. And God does use Egypt. God does use the world to provide for his children. Now when Jacob brought his whole clan to Egypt, they were treated very well. Right? And so if you look with me in Genesis, we're going to go back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 47, if you want to turn there. 47 verses 5 to 7, we see this. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you, the land of Egypt before you." And look at what Pharaoh says. "Have your father and brothers dwell in the slums? In the shoddy corners? No. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land." This is Pharaoh speaking to Joseph. "Have your folks dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them my lowly workers in my kingdom. No, make them the chief herdsmen over my livestock." Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. So what do we see here? What do we see here in these three short verses? As the children of God come to Egypt, they are given the best place to live. You know, if you're looking to buy real estate, it's all about location, and school district. But look, that comes with location. It's all about where you live. And the Israelites are given the best land in Egypt. Right? Then they come in and they're given this treatment. The people who can work with livestock, which would be a lot of the Israelites, the Pharaoh says, he doesn't say make them, the lowly herdsmen, make them my chief herdsmen over my livestock. Right? So right away, they've been given elevated positions, job positions, good job positions. And Jacob, he was treated with great dignity and honor. Right? Those who are in greater positions bless those who are in lower positions. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Alice referred to this when she touched on this passage, where you see the relationship being set. Right? And some scholars would say the reason Pharaoh allowed this, even though he was technically the greatest in the land, was Jacob was older. He had lived, I think at this point, Jacob was 130 years old. Egyptians hardly ever broke 120. So they see this man, he's lived to be 130 years old. There is a kind of reverence that he's lived this long, he's lived this well. Something about him. He's put in a position of honor. Right? By today's terms, I think if we look at the Israelites, we would say, hey, they finally made it. They have finally made it. They're living in the best places. They've got the best jobs. And they are treated with honor and respect by the world. Right? In the world, the Israelites have finally made it. And they grew very mighty in this land. Jump now to Exodus chapter 1. Exodus chapter 1, verses 6 to 7. "And Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. But the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew exceedingly mighty. And the land was filled with them." So the Israelites, not only were they given the best of the best, not only were they treated with honor, respect, and dignity, but they grew mightily. They became a force to be reckoned with. And they stayed there long enough. They stayed there long enough that Joseph and his brothers died. Now, by way of reminder, you don't have to turn there, but think back. What was the prophecy? What was the prophecy that Joseph gave to the Pharaoh when he interpreted his dreams? There were going to be, 7 years of plenty, right? 7 years where the grains would grow like you wouldn't believe, followed by 7 years of famine. Right? So if you think about that, how many years was the famine supposed to last? 7. By the time the Israelites came to Egypt, it was already in the 2nd year of the famine. So how long do you think the Israelites should have stayed in Egypt? 5.5 at the most to sell off your properties and relocate. Right? That's really how long they should have stayed there. But look at how long they stayed so long that Joseph and his brothers had passed and all that whole generation. God brought the Israelites into Egypt, into a foreign land, into a place that was not to be their home, to survive the famine. Right? Egypt is not their home, but here they come, they come into this land, they enjoy the prestige, they enjoy the honor, they enjoy the good homes, they enjoy the good jobs, and they got comfortable. The Israelites came into the world and they got comfortable, and they stayed long after the famine was over. Generations passed. Right? When we think of generations, I am a first-generation immigrant. I came to the States when I was young, so I would be technically a first-generation immigrant. But I was young when I came. My grandmother brought me over, right? Now I have my kids. They are born here. And one more generation after Alice and I passed, that part of our lives would be over, right? And what the Israelites have done is they've come into the land and they have let the heritage pass. They have let where they were supposed to be living in pass, and they became comfortable and they settled down in the world. And generations passed, and then what we see as time goes on is that all the glamour, all the prestige, all the wealth they had, that the world gave them and showered on them, turned sour. Exodus chapter 1, keep reading. Verses 8 to 11. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen in the event of war, that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens, and they, the Israelites, built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. Okay. A new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. So what is happening here? We see a generation passing, right? Now you have a new king, a new Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph. All of a sudden, for the Israelites, their connection was gone. Right? They were riding on the good graces of Joseph because he had risen up in the ranks by God's blessing and become second in command in the land of Egypt. And because of his position, his family was treated well. Now here comes a new boss. Right? I don't know how many of you have ever experienced this. You're working, you have a great relationship with the boss, and you can have freedom to do whatever you want. And then that boss goes, and a new boss comes in, doesn't know the old relationships, and all of a sudden you're knocked right back down to where you started. That's what's happening here. The Israelites, because they've lost their connection to the old king, the old Pharaoh, this new king is, what is he saying? He's saying, look, there's too many of these people, these foreigners in our land, these Israelites, there's too many of them, they're growing too fast, they're growing too strong. We gotta be careful. What if there's a battle? What if there's a war and they decide to join the enemies? We would be overrun, right? And so the new king, the new Pharaoh says, we're going to put them to work. We're going to make their lives hard so that they don't grow as quickly. And so verse 15, you see this. he goes to extremes now. Because the people of Israel, by God's blessing, even though they are in hardship, they continue to grow, continue to grow. Verse 15, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, then you shall kill him. If it is a son, then you shall kill him. You know, for the Israelites, I think, it's like, what's going on? We live in this land. We were given the best land to live in. We were given the best jobs. Our forefather blessed the Pharaoh. How do we go from that to every male child that is born is to be killed? Right? Look at how far they have fallen in the world's eyes. And the Israelites, they continue to grow in strength despite what the Pharaoh was trying to do to limit them, to limit their numbers. Turn back with me to Genesis chapter 47. Well, actually, no, don't turn back. I'll read it. Genesis chapter 47. Remember, when the Pharaoh said, have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land, make your people the chief herdsmen over my livestock. You got to think about what's going through the minds of the Israelites. Whatever happened to these honorable positions you gave us? Whatever happened to the prestige, to the honor that you bestowed upon our people? So now, today, you are killing our children. Right? And I think, remember, what happened with the Israelites? They came in, they were supposed to be here for a short time, deal with the famine, get food, and then go back to where God wanted you to be. But they overstayed their welcome. They started to enjoy what the Egyptians gave them. Now, this is the thing I want us to remember. The world at times may treat you well. The world may lay their accolades on you. The world may say, good job, you're doing well. We're going to start promoting you, elevating you, giving you more pay, giving you a better title, giving you a better position, putting your face on a plaque, employee of the month. I don't know what kind of praise you seek. I don't know what kind of praise the world gives. I remember I have this clock. I think I still have it. It was a clock that was given to me. It's a nice clock, kind of big. It was for my 5th year anniversary from when I was working at Sun Microsystems, which is now gone. Right? The world chooses their ways to honor you, to tell you, hey, you're a good employee, good job. Right? We value you. Here's something to remember the years of service that you've given us. The world and the praises that the world gives you will not last. I'm going to read a few verses for you. Colossians chapter 3, verse 22 to 23. Bondservants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in sincerity of heart, fearing God. And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men. When we live in the world, and we do live in the world, we exist in the world, right? God calls us to be in the world, but not in the world. While we are in the world, the one thing we have to be very careful of is whatever we do, do it to the best of your ability, right? I don't like it when Christians go out and say, my boss, he's Pharaoh. He's the taskmaster of the world, and this is the world system. So when I work, I don't have to put my best effort in because this is not my home. You're misquoting what the Bible tells us. Do your best. The Bible tells us whatever you do. This passage here is talking to servants, slaves and servants. Even as a slave, as a servant, whatever you do it to the best of your ability. But to whom? Who are you serving? God. Do it as unto God, not unto men. Why? Because if you do it for men, they will love you for a season. And then all of a sudden their praise, gone. They don't care. Look, you may meet some nice people that you work for in this world. Yes. But the system as a whole, I'm sorry to say, does not care about you. You are just another cog in the wheel. It's just business. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. But when we work, I've been laid off too many times. In my time in the tech field, I've been laid off too many times. But this one brother I knew, bless his heart, he said, look, Jason, if you want to work in the Silicon Valley, get used to it. Getting laid off is like getting lunch. It happens. You just pick yourself up and move on, right? The world, they're just doing business. What they care about is the bottom line. They don't care about you as a person. They like it when you work well, so they will reward you, and they want you to work well. But when your position becomes redundant, that's the word they use in layoffs, right? When your position becomes redundant, they no longer need you. Hey, you know what? Thank you for those 5 years. Why don't you pack that clock when you pack all your other belongings when you leave the office? You've got to be out by the end of the day, right? That's the way the world operates. Whatever accolades they give you, here one day, gone the other. So when you do what you do in your jobs, whatever you do it unto the Lord. Another verse, Ephesians chapter 6. Bondservants, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh. Kind of the same thing, same idea. With fear and trembling, in sincerity of heart, as to Christ. As to Christ. And everything that you're doing, when you're pouring those lattes, when you're making those little hearts, right? Do it as unto God. Every note that you're playing, every child that you're teaching, every homework assignment that you are doing. It's not just pastors who are serving the Lord, please. Not just the pastors. Everything that you are doing in your life. Every steel pipe that you are bending and laying. Everything. Do it as unto the Lord. To please Him. The song, Be Thou My Visions, hymn. The very, very first hymn that we sang here at Porch Light back on January 7th of 2017. The very first hymn we sang, Be Thou My Vision. One of the verses says, riches I heed not. The next line I love. Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Riches I heed not. Money is fine. I live by it. The Lord sustains me by it. But I don't pay attention to it. Nor do I heed man's empty praise. And man's praise is empty. It really is empty. All the best praise that you'll get from men, again, here one day, gone the next. Whatever organization that you work for, here one day, gone the next. Driving up 101, I saw this building. Gosh, where was it? It's next to the AMC Mercado office building. It's in Rummels. And I've actually seen a few places where, these once great office buildings or residential areas, they get torn down, right? At one point, this office building was a pride and joy of somebody, right? Newly erected building, right? New businesses coming in. Look at all the commerce that is happening here. Didn't last, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years, then it's torn down to make room for something new. Everything in this world is passing. Everything is passing. And so the question is, what are you living for, and who is your God? The question I want to ask us is, what are you living for, and who is your God? For the Israelites, they had come to depend on Egypt for sustenance. They had become comfortable. They settled down, they grew their roots, and then all of a sudden, this was their new home. This was where they were comfortable. This was where they were loved. Didn't last long. They got comfortable. Look, Jacob commanded them, when you leave, take my bones with you. Joseph said the same thing. Don't leave me in this place. Don't leave me in this place. You have to take me with you when you go. Why? Because this is not our home. This is not our final resting place, not our destination. But again, the Israelites had settled in, they enjoyed the praises and the accolades of the world, and then for however many years it was that they were there, all those generations, God was out of sight, out of mind. Because now here they were living comfortably, they had everything they would need, right? And this is disturbing. You don't see God mentioned until the end of Exodus chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2, verse 23. Now it happened in the process of time that the king of Egypt died. Then the children of Israel groaned because of the bondage, and they cried out. And their cry came up to God because of the bondage. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God acknowledged them. While they were there, living in the best lands, while they were there, being put in charge over the Pharaoh's herdsmen, while they were there giving blessings left and right, they weren't calling out to God. They enjoyed everything, and then God was a forgotten thought. But then once things went south, once the world turned their backs on the Israelites, then all of a sudden they called to God. And so the question I want to ask is, who's your God? When things are going not well, it's easy to call to God, yes. But when things are going well, when we're flying high, when the world is showering you with praise, who's your God then? Has it become the world? Do you start to put everything, all your nest eggs in the world? Have you started to worship the world as your God? Or do you continue to sing praise to God? Do you continue to seek God? Do you continue to do everything that's unto God? What enthralls you and what captivates you? And I love this word enthrall, right? Nowadays, when we think of the word enthrall, I'm enthralled by something. We think of this idea of, I don't know, how would you describe it? How would you define it? It's kind of got a nice feeling, right? The word enthrall. I'm just overcome with a desire, a love, whatever. This thing is so awesome. Everything is awesome, right? The word enthrall, you know what? If you look at the word enthrall, it's enslaved. The word thrall, T-H-R-A-L-L, thrall, is a slave. So to be enthralled is to be enslaved. The definition now that we go by, to be enthralled, is to capture the fascinated attention of, right? To capture the fascinated attention of. But look, when your attention is captured, think of the word captured. When your attention is captured by the world, it's captive. It is captured. It is captive. That's not a good thing. Being captured is not a good thing. Ask the hostages. I don't know if you're picking up the news. There were some folks who were in, I guess, on these tours out in Africa. I don't remember the place exactly. But they were taken captive, right? They've been freed, 4 of them, recently this last week. And one of them said it was living hell. They were enthralled. They didn't come back saying, I love being enthralled. No, being captive is a living hell, right? The word captivate, it's a little easier to think of that, right? Being a captive to someone. So here's my question. What enthralls you and what captivates you? You are always a slave. You are always a slave. You will always be a slave. You're maybe thinking, but Jason, I believe in Jesus. I have freedom. No, you are always a slave. The question is, to whom are you a slave? You are a slave to the world, or you are a slave to Jesus. Now, slaves to Jesus have a beautiful freedom to be found in that submission to Jesus. Right? But you are either slave to one or slave to the other. Slave to God and to Jesus, your Lord and Maker, or slave to the world. Which one captivates you? And this is something we have to really be honest with ourselves here. It is very easy. It is very easy to say that Jesus is my master and the world, I don't belong to the world. But we have to examine our actions. We have to examine how we invest our time, how we invest our resources, where our thoughts go. When we look at that, you know, Jonathan remembers this well. This one speaker had come and shared something with us at one conference before. And he said, look, if you want to say that you belong to Jesus, show me proof. And this is what he said, show me your checkbook and show me your calendar. Where does your time go? Where does your money go? What do you spend your money on? What do you spend your time on? And that will show you who your master is. Right? To whom are we captivated? To whom are we enthralled by? The very things that God puts into our lives to give us sustenance can become the thing that we worship. You know, look, today's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, guys. The things that captivate us, we have to be careful. And this is think about this, you know. Just picture this morning that we're all moms. Pretend. A little harder for the brothers, but just pretend you're a mom. And you've got your kid, and you're feeding your kid with a spoon, right? You're spooning this pre-whatever mush, pre-chewed mush that kids eat, right? And you're feeding, the baby is happy. The baby's being fed. Who's feeding the baby? You are. Imagine at nap time, you find the baby cradling the spoon. How I love you. The spoon, I love the spoon. This spoon feeds me. This spoon takes me. What in the world? You know? Dumb baby, who raised you? What's wrong with your dad, right? This is what happens when we are captivated by the world. The world is here simply to give us food. Put food in our belly and the roof of our heads. God is a sustainer. But then we look at the spoon. And we say, oh, spoon, you are so good to me. Oh, spoon, let me be friends with you. Oh, spoon, let's see what we can do together. Spoon, let me be one, I don't know. And God is sitting there thinking, he's not thinking stupid baby, but pretty close, I think. He's thinking, I am the one who provides for you. I am the one who sustains you. This world is not your home. What are you doing, Jason? He's looking down saying, what are you doing? And very often we are captivated by the spoon, but not Moses. But not Moses. Moses was an Israelite. Moses was an Israelite. He was one of the babies that was supposed to have been killed. But by God's grace, he was spared from being killed for a reason. We will get into that. I think most of you know, but we're going to look at the book of Exodus, how Moses led the people of Israel out of Egypt. He was spared for a reason. If you remember, Moses, when he was born, was supposed to be killed, but his mom hid him and then said, put him in a basket and put him in a river. The Pharaoh's daughter bathes there. Maybe she will have compassion on him. Speaking of compassion, we found some kittens in our backyard this past week. And I don't know, something about seeing newborn things that are really helpless and fragile, your heart kind of goes out to them. So I've been, pouring out milk, and they don't drink it when I'm there. When I come there, they scatter, right? But then I come back later today and they go so much. Pharaoh's daughter sees his baby floating down the river, and her heart goes out to the baby. She's, oh, look, it's a Hebrew child. He's supposed to be dead, but it's a Hebrew child. He's helpless. So the Pharaoh's daughter takes Moses in and raises him as her own. Right? Talk about being part of the world. His identity now is identified with the world. He is identified with the Egyptians. Grows up in the Pharaoh's, I don't know what it's called. It's not a castle. Palace, okay? Palace. Grows up in the Pharaoh's palace. He's given all the royal food, royal treatment, royal clothes, royal education, royal everything. That's Moses. He was given everything by the world. But he had it all. He had it all. He had the prestige. He had wealth. He had power. He had everything. But in the end, Moses realized what was important. His eyes were not on the spoon. His eyes were on the one holding the spoon. Hebrews chapter 11. Turn with me there if you can. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 24. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Look, he had everything going for him if he chose to keep being identified as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. There was so much to be gained by Moses if he just said, I'm going to just keep being identified as this. But when he became of age by faith, Moses refused. He refused. That's a strong word. He refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. The passing pleasures, because all these things are ending one day. Moses saw something beyond what he was enjoying at the moment. He says, I am not going to identify with Pharaoh and his daughter. I'm not going to enjoy these passing pleasures of sin. Verse 26, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. For he looked to the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him, God, who is invisible. And that's our challenge today. As we live in this world, as we receive that visible paycheck for our jobs, as we put that visible food into our mouths, as we live in that visible dwelling, all of it is a spoon. But can your eyes be looking past all of this, looking at the invisible one, God, who put it all there to keep you alive? God put all these things there to keep you alive, not so that you can just sit there and enjoy it, but so that you can serve him and do his work. But many times, instead of looking to God, we don't look to God. We don't consider why he gives us life. And we talked about this last week, right? God giving us purpose. What is a purpose in life? Not to come and enjoy all these things. Right? Don't go out to lunch today and eat your food and say, this is disgusting. I'm not supposed to. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your dwelling, wherever God's put you. Enjoy whatever mode of transportation God's given you, even your Prius. Whatever God's given you, enjoy it. But that's not where we stop. That's not why we're here. Moses saw and he understood and he said, look, Egypt is nice. It is nice. Egypt gives me a lot. I refuse to be a part of this. I am not going to give my life to enjoying this anymore, because what? These are the passing pleasures of sin. It's all going away one day. It's all coming to an end. Who's not coming to an end? God. And so Moses kept his eyes on the eternal. And look, this is what we try to do here at Porch Life again and again. And I know sometimes it starts to sound like we're nagging. And I hope you don't feel like we're nagging. But really, God has put something in our hearts. Welcome home. Welcome home. We have seen where home is. And we look at the world and we see so many people who are out in the dark thinking that that is home, living their life for that darkness. And we're here in this little home, but God-given home. And this is what we want to do here at Porch Life, just remind people. For those who don't know where home is, point them the way home. For those who are from home, the family of God, children of God, who maybe forgot where home is, a reminder, come back. This is what we're here for, to live for the Lord. May Moses and the choice he made be a reminder for us that this is not our home. And to put our life, invest our lives into something that's going to last. Invest ourselves into something that's going to last. Pour ourselves into something of eternal order. Let's bow our heads and pray. Jesus, it really is a struggle sometimes to see past the here and now, to see past the present day and our present needs. But I pray, Lord, that you would open our eyes so that we can see what is eternal, so that we can see what Moses saw. Not the passing pleasures of sin, but Lord, eternity. You put it in our hearts. You put eternity in our hearts. May we not forget. And may we as a church continue to remind each other, Lord, of what is important. Continue to remind each other to invest our lives into something of eternal value. Pray these things in Jesus' name.